Welcome to Heartline Stories. Today's story follows a billionaire who has it all: wealth, power, and success. But when he challenges a simple waitress at a local diner, her answer leaves him speechless. He never expected that a conversation over a cup of coffee would change everything. What happens next will shock him, making him question everything he thought he knew about life, success, and happiness. Can this waitress teach him the lesson he's been missing all along? Keep watching to find out how one small act of kindness has the power to transform a life. And let us know where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. Tyler Williams was a billionaire who had everything anyone could dream of: a huge mansion, luxury cars, and a private jet. But even with all his wealth, Tyler often felt bored. He liked to test people, to see if they were just like everyone else or if they were different in some way. He often went to fancy restaurants, where he would sit in the most expensive seats and order the best meals. One evening, Tyler decided to visit a small, quiet diner in the middle of town. It wasn't the kind of place he usually went to, but he was curious. As soon as he walked in, the warm smell of fresh pancakes and coffee filled the air. The diner was cozy, and the walls were decorated with pictures of old movies and local heroes. Tyler took a seat at the counter, and a friendly waitress with short brown hair and a big smile came up to him. "Hi there. What can I get for you today?" she asked. "Just a coffee for now," Tyler said, not looking up from his phone. The waitress nodded and quickly returned with his coffee. Tyler glanced up at her, intrigued. Her name tag read Sophie. "Is that all you're going to have? Just coffee?" Sophie asked, noticing the man hadn't ordered anything else. Tyler looked at her, smirking. "Maybe I'll order more later, but I doubt this place can offer me anything interesting." Sophie raised an eyebrow. She could tell Tyler wasn't from around here. He didn't seem like the type to come to a small diner. "Well," she said, "we've got some great homemade pie and burgers, but if you don't like it, I guess you can just leave." Tyler grinned. "Oh, I don't think I'll leave. But how about a challenge?" Sophie tilted her head, curious. "A challenge?" "Yeah," Tyler said, leaning forward, his voice lowering. "I challenge you to make me stay here. Impress me if you can." Sophie chuckled softly. She had dealt with many rude customers before, but something about this guy felt different. "All right, Mr. Billionaire, I'll take your challenge, but you better be ready." Tyler sat back, crossing his arms with a confident smile. He knew she wouldn't be able to impress him. After all, he had eaten at some of the best restaurants in the world, and nothing ever amazed him anymore. Sophie walked away and returned a few minutes later with a plate of warm, homemade apple pie, fresh out of the oven. The smell was delicious, and it filled the air. "Here's something we do well: homemade apple pie," Sophie said, setting the plate in front of him. "Try it, and no need to act like you've had better. Just enjoy it." Tyler eyed the pie. He didn't want to admit it, but the smell was tempting. He took a small bite, his eyes widening as the sweet taste hit his tongue. It was incredible. Warm, perfectly spiced, with a flaky crust. Sophie watched him closely as he took another bite. Tyler had always considered himself an expert on fine dining, but he couldn't deny the pie was delicious. "It's good," he said, looking up at Sophie with a surprised look. "Better than I expected." "I told you," Sophie said with a wink. "We might not be fancy, but we know how to make food with love." Tyler was a little speechless. He wasn't used to being impressed by something so simple. "All right, I'll admit it. This is really good. But what else do you have?" Sophie smiled and leaned on the counter. "We have burgers, fries, milkshakes, and a few other specials. But what I think will really surprise you is something else." "Really? What's that?" Tyler asked, genuinely curious now. Sophie leaned in a little closer. "You're not going to believe it, but we have a dish called the Challenge. It's a big burger with double everything: cheese, bacon, you name it. And if you finish it, I'll give it to you for free." Tyler's eyes lit up. "A challenge, huh? I'm not scared of a burger. I've eaten bigger meals than this." Sophie smiled. "Well, you can't back out once you start. But I warn you, it's harder than it looks." Tyler agreed to take the challenge. Sophie quickly went to the kitchen and came back with a huge burger piled high with all sorts of toppings. It looked like a mountain of food, but Tyler wasn't worried. He had eaten at five-star restaurants where the portions were huge, and he'd always managed to finish them. As he took the first big bite, he noticed something unusual. The burger wasn't just big, it was delicious. The beef was juicy, the cheese melted perfectly, and the bacon added just the right crunch. Sophie's homemade sauce brought it all together. Tyler was shocked. How could a small diner like this have such amazing food? Halfway through the burger, Tyler started to feel full. He looked at Sophie, who was watching him with a playful smile. "How's it going, Mr. Billionaire?" she teased. Tyler wiped his mouth. "It's good, but it's a lot to handle." Sophie crossed her arms and leaned against the counter. "Well, if you want to get the burger for free, you'll have to finish it." Tyler glanced at the burger. He wasn't sure he could finish it. It was huge, and he wasn't used to being challenged like this. But he couldn't give up. He was a billionaire, used to winning at everything. So he pushed through, taking another giant bite. Just when he thought he couldn't eat another bite, Sophie said something that stopped him. "Here's the real challenge, Tyler," she said with a smile. "It's not just about eating a big burger. It's about enjoying the simple things in life." Tyler paused, the burger halfway to his mouth. "What do you mean?" Sophie's eyes softened. "You have everything, but I can tell you're not really happy. You come here looking for a challenge, but what you're really searching for is something real, something that money can't buy. Maybe you should try that instead." Tyler sat back in his seat, stunned. He had spent so many years working hard, chasing after wealth and status, that he had forgotten what it was like to just enjoy life. Sophie's words made him think about everything he had been missing. Tyler sat there staring at Sophie, his mind racing. Her words hit him harder than he expected. He had been so focused on his business, on making more money, that he had never truly thought about what he was really missing. What was the point of all this wealth if it didn't make him truly happy? Sophie stood there, waiting patiently, not pushing him. She seemed to have a quiet confidence, something Tyler hadn't seen in most people he interacted with. In the past, he would have brushed off anyone who spoke to him like that, but something about Sophie made him stop and listen. "I never really thought about it that way," Tyler admitted, his voice quieter than usual. Sophie smiled warmly. "Most people don't. It's easy to get caught up in the chase for more. But real happiness is found in the small moments, the ones that don't cost anything." Tyler looked at the half-eaten burger in front of him, and then at Sophie, who was still watching him. He had never met anyone who was so grounded, so sure of herself. It made him feel a little embarrassed. Here he was, with all his riches, and this waitress seemed to have more understanding of life than he did. "I've spent so much time trying to be the best at everything," Tyler said, leaning back in his chair. "I never stopped to think if I was actually happy, if I even knew what that felt like anymore." Sophie nodded. "A lot of people are like that. They spend their whole lives chasing something, only to realize it doesn't make them happy. It's not about being the best, it's about being content." Tyler looked down at his hands. He realized Sophie was right. All his accomplishments, all the money, the fancy cars, it didn't matter if he didn't feel fulfilled. For the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of clarity. "I think I understand," Tyler said slowly, "but it's hard to change everything I've built." Sophie smiled kindly. "You don't have to change everything, Tyler. Start with the little things. Appreciate the moments you have right now." Tyler took another bite of the burger, but this time he really tasted it. The flavors seemed richer, the experience somehow more meaningful. For the first time, he wasn't just eating to finish it. He was enjoying the food for what it was, simple yet satisfying. The night went on, and Tyler stayed at the diner much longer than he had planned. He and Sophie talked about everything, her job, her dreams, and what she loved about the diner. Sophie told him she had worked there for years and loved helping people find joy in the little things, even if they didn't notice it at first. Tyler learned more in those few hours than he had in the past few months. He learned that happiness wasn't about luxury. It wasn't about impressing people. It was about being present, enjoying simple pleasures, and connecting with others on a deeper level. As the evening came to a close, Tyler stood up to pay for his meal, though Sophie insisted that it was on the house. "I can't accept that," Tyler said, pulling out his wallet, but Sophie simply shook her head. "You paid in a different way tonight, Tyler. You took the time to listen. You let go of your pride. That's more valuable than any money." Tyler paused, looking at her with a newfound respect. "I guess you're right. I needed to hear that." Sophie smiled, her eyes shining with kindness. Just remember, life's not about always being the best or having more. It's about finding peace in what you already have. Tyler left the diner feeling lighter than he had in a long time. He thought about Sophie's words all the way back to his mansion. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to life than just business deals and flashy cars. As he pulled into his driveway, he felt a strange sense of calm. He decided that tomorrow he would do things differently. He would start looking at life through a new lens, not one of competition or comparison, but one of gratitude and simplicity. But little did Tyler know, this was just the beginning of a bigger change that was coming. The next morning, Tyler woke up early, feeling surprisingly refreshed. For the first time in years, he didn't wake up to a mountain of emails, phone calls, and meetings. Instead, he woke up with a quiet sense of purpose. He had decided he wasn't going to let the busy world pull him in today. It was time to try something new. After a quick breakfast, Tyler got into his car, not heading to his office or a meeting, but to the same diner where he had met Sophie the night before. He wasn't sure what he would do once he got there, but something inside told him that spending time in a place where people appreciated the little things would help him clear his mind. When Tyler walked through the diner's door, he was greeted by the smell of fresh coffee and the sound of soft chatter. Sophie was behind the counter, wiping down a table. She looked up and saw him, her eyes lighting up with a small smile. "Back so soon?" she asked, raising an eyebrow in surprise. Tyler nodded. "I figured I'd spend the morning here. I've been thinking about what you said. I want to change the way I see things." Sophie placed the rag down and leaned against the counter. "Well, I'm glad to hear that. It's easy to get caught up in the rush, but it's hard to find peace when you're always running." Tyler sat down at the counter, looking around the diner. It wasn't fancy, but it had a warmth to it that he didn't feel in the cold, modern spaces he usually surrounded himself with. There was something comforting about this small place, and he could see how it made people feel welcome. It was a far cry from the sterile, marble-floored offices and boardrooms he was used to. Sophie poured him a cup of coffee without asking, knowing he liked it black. She placed the cup in front of him and sat down next to him, waiting for him to speak. "I've been working so hard for so long, thinking that success meant always being on top," Tyler started. "But I've come to realize that what I've been chasing isn't what I really need. I need more than just power and money. I need to understand what truly matters." Sophie smiled gently. "You're not the first person to figure that out, but I'm glad you're on the right track." Tyler sat there sipping his coffee. It was strange, but he actually felt peaceful. There was no rush, no expectations, just a quiet moment of reflection. He realized that he hadn't taken a break in years. The constant pressure to be the best, to climb higher, had worn him down without him even noticing. Suddenly, he had an idea. What if I could help people who don't have the same opportunities I've had? Maybe I could use some of my wealth to make a real difference. Not just in business, but in the lives of people who need it. Sophie looked at him with surprise and a little excitement. "That sounds like a great idea, Tyler. It's not about what you can buy or own, but what you can give to others. That's where real fulfillment comes from." Tyler smiled. "I think you're right. I've spent too much time thinking about what I can get, but I've never really thought about what I can give." At that moment, Tyler made a decision. He would start small. He wouldn't change everything overnight, but he would begin by helping others, starting with Sophie's diner. He knew there were places that could use a little extra support, and maybe, just maybe, his small gesture could start a bigger wave of change. Tyler left the diner later that morning with a renewed sense of purpose. He didn't go back to his office or call any of his business partners. Instead, he took a walk around the city, looking at it through a new lens. He saw people on the streets, families in the parks, and local businesses struggling to stay afloat. These were the people he had never really noticed before. People who were just trying to get by, without the luxury of billion-dollar deals and fancy cars. He realized that there was so much more to life than success. It wasn't about money or being admired. It was about the people you helped and the lives you touched. That afternoon, Tyler went back to his office and called a meeting with his top advisors. "I want to shift our focus," he told them. "I've been too focused on wealth and power. It's time for us to give back in a bigger way. We're going to invest in local communities, help small businesses, and find ways to make a real difference in the lives of people who need it. His advisors were surprised, but Tyler was determined. He was ready to make his wealth work for something greater than himself. Tyler spent the next few weeks working on his new mission. He didn't want to make a big announcement or show off what he was doing. He just wanted to help quietly, in a way that would bring about real change. He started by supporting small businesses that were struggling, offering grants to local projects, and even helping fund scholarships for underprivileged students. He also worked with local charities, offering to fund food banks and community programs. But throughout all of this, Tyler kept in touch with Sophie. He wanted her to know that her words had made a difference. They began talking more regularly, and he even visited the diner more often. Sophie was surprised by how much Tyler had changed in such a short time. He wasn't just the billionaire businessman who sat in his office all day. He was a man who truly wanted to make the world a better place. And while Tyler knew he still had a long way to go, he felt like he was finally on the right path. He realized that the true measure of success wasn't in the things you owned, but in the lives you touched along the way. As the weeks passed, Tyler continued on his mission to make a real difference in the lives of those around him. He used his wealth to support local charities, help small businesses, and fund community projects. But what truly amazed him was how much he was learning from the people he was helping. They weren't looking for anything fancy. They were just looking for a chance, an opportunity to make their lives better. Tyler's visits to Sophie's diner became more frequent. Each time he came, he would sit at the counter, enjoying the simple atmosphere and talking with her about life. It was in these quiet moments that Tyler realized something. Sophie had unknowingly given him a new purpose. She had shown him that success wasn't about the money or the power. It was about how much you gave to others, how much you cared. One evening, as the sun set and the diner grew quieter, Tyler finished his meal and stood up to leave. Sophie walked over to him, wiping her hands on her apron. "Thanks again for all your help," she said. "I never thought I'd see the day a billionaire would care about this little diner." Tyler smiled, placing his hand on the counter. "I've learned more from you than I ever could have from any business meeting or boardroom." Sophie chuckled. "I'm just a waitress, Tyler. But if you can learn something from me, then that makes me happy." Tyler looked at Sophie with sincerity in his eyes. "You've helped me find a purpose I didn't know I was missing. I'll always be grateful for that." Sophie nodded, her smile warm. Sometimes it's the simplest things that teach us the biggest lessons. Tyler left the diner that night, feeling lighter than he had in years. He knew he still had a lot of work to do, but he was on the right track. He had found peace in helping others, and for the first time in a long time, he was truly happy. Months later, Tyler's efforts had a visible impact. Small businesses flourished, scholarships helped students attend college, and the community projects he funded brought people together. Tyler had found a new way of living, one where his wealth wasn't the focus, but the happiness and success of others. One evening, as he sat in the diner with Sophie, he realized just how far he had come. It wasn't the fancy cars or the big houses that had changed him. It was the simple moments, the kindness of people like Sophie, and the joy that came from giving. "Thank you, Sophie," Tyler said, raising his cup of coffee. She smiled back. "You did it, Tyler. You found what really matters." Tyler nodded, grateful for everything Sophie had unknowingly taught him. In the end, he learned that happiness doesn't come from what you own or how much money you make. It comes from the way you live, the kindness you give, and the lives you touch along the way. And for the first time, Tyler truly felt like he had everything he needed.